Welcome back to Witchin' and Whinin'. I'm your resident witch, Miranda.
And I'm your resident wino, Christal.
Disclaimer, guys, we're sick today, so if you hear our voices being weird, that's why.
Yeah. Oh, and I did want everyone to know, I don't know if everyone has realized this or not, but at the very end of every episode, after the outro music, every episode, all the way from our very first one, has my kids saying something goofy or silly. So if you want to fast forward or stick around to that at the end, you'll get a little smile after each one. Oh, and I think our next episode is going to be our first Witchin' and Whinin' Junior episode.
Yeah.
Which is our children doing their own little mini podcast.
It's so exciting. They're so cute.
It is. All right, let's get back to it. This is the podcast where we pair a bottle of something delicious with a bit of something haunted.
Which honestly is just our fancy way of saying, you drink wine, I stir the cauldron, and we both tell creepy stories that'll have you checking under your bed.
Tonight we're traveling from Brazil to Canada, from Ohio to right here in Arkansas, uncovering true poltergeist cases, so strange and so well documented, they'll make you question what's really knocking in the night.
And don't worry, we'll keep it creepy, but we'll also keep it fun because we're not about to let a ghost kill the vibe. So this story is about Mackinac Island. Mackinac Island sits between Michigan's upper and lower peninsulas. It's tiny, about 4 square miles, and it's home to fewer than 500 people. But every year, thousands of tourists come for the scenery, and they come for the history, and the cultural events, and apparently the fudge. Cars are absolutely banned here, so you can get around by horse, by biking around, or by walking. It's charming, but it also means if something starts chasing you, you better hope your bike chain doesn't slip. Long before the tourists arrived, the Ojibwa and Ottawa tribes used the island as a sacred burial ground. They called it Michilimackinac, meaning great turtle in the Ottawa dialect. This was a place of deep spiritual importance. But in 1780, the British claimed it, of course, built a fort, and drove the native people away. What's freaking new? Then the United States took it from the British in 1783. In 1812, the British took it back. In 1815, the U.S. swiped it again, and in between, it served as headquarters for the American Fur Company. Centuries of war, displacement, and death all layered on this one sacred ground. So it was just getting like hot potato tossed back and forth. And of course, whenever there is disagreement or conflict, there's going to be, death. Yeah.
It's got to be haunted.
Yes. Specifically, we're going to talk about what's called the Witch's Drowning Pool. At the southern tip of Mackinac lies a small pool with a deceptive secret, a near 20-foot drop into the depth. In the 1700s and 1800s, it became the site of witch trials. The first method was called dunking. God. So basically, a lover dunked the accused, which was, of course, always a woman, into the pool again and again. And if she drowned without confessing, she was innocent in death. Like, she would be found innocent of being a witch, but she would be dead. So, like, what? But if she confessed, the dunking stopped, so they would hang her instead. So honestly, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Like, either way, this woman's going to end up dead.
Which makes a whole lot of sense. If she was a witch, couldn't she just, not drown herself?
For real. Oh my God. I don't even know where did that even come up with? Like, who had the brilliant idea to be like, oh, I know how to test if they're witches?
A man.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. The second method bound her ankles, so they would tie her by the ankles and weigh her with rocks and just throw her in. If she floated, she was a witch. If she sunk, she was innocent. Again, either way, she died. So 7 women were tried there. All 7 of those women still haunt the pool. And visitors have seen splashes without a source, and they've seen shadowy figures drifting below the surface or hovering above it. Whenever they saw that movement, they say that nothing ever broke the water, and they didn't even see so much as a ripple. So the next place that I'm going to talk about for Mackinac is the Grand Hotel. And this was built in 1887, and it was rumored to stand over an old cemetery. Some say workers tried to relocate the bodies during construction, but they kind of gave up. Whether that's urban legend or not, this place is teeming with ghost stories. One is Little Rebecca, a child ghost who wanders the 4th floor between 2 and 4 a.m. and vanishes as suddenly as she appears. Another is a woman in black, and she paces the porch after dark with a large white dog. In ghost lores, white dogs are rare, and it raises question about animals and the afterlife, really. And then there's a shadowy black mass with glowing red eyes. They say it's roughly human-shaped, but it has no arms or legs, and it's like a semi-solid cloud, and apparently it's aggressive, and it physically attacks the guest, even knocking the maintenance man unconscious once. Most often, it lurks near the stage in the hotel's theater. I mean, Mackinac Island is a small place, so it's interesting that it has all these, things that's happening. And so I imagine if you were to, bring some sort of, energy sensor or anything, you would pick up on something real fast, because it's such a concentrated, area.
And it's only 4 square miles for the entire thing, and you can only pretty much drive a bicycle. Even if you could drive away fast enough on your little bicycle to get away from all this.
Where are you going?
Yeah, where are you going to? The next haunted place.
Fort Mackinac, in this case. So Fort Mackinac, the Revolutionary War brought this Fort Mackinac 14 buildings. So there's barracks, storehouses, a hospital, a schoolhouse, those sort of things. It remains largely unchanged since the 19th century. Here, visitors hear phantom fife music, they hear musket shots without reenactments, and they see orbs and outdoor photos. The hospital holds the strangest reports. So they see ghostly amputated limbs, just the limb itself, detached from the body, and then they would feel waves of sudden grief. In the guardhouse and the soldiers' quarters, people say they could hear crying children, and the toys move overnight, and furniture shifts on its own. It's as if the dead were restoring the rooms to how they remembered them. Because, if you think about the guardhouse and the soldiers' quarters, I imagine, they would have their families. You know what I mean? It wouldn't just be barracks. The people who lived there tried to just find some sense of normalcy. Next, we have Mission Point Resort. This spot began as a home, actually, in 1825, and it grew into a religious complex in the 1950s and became Mackinac College in 1966, and finally a resort in 1972. So it's quite interesting, this whole, change, metamorphosis this one location had. Home, maybe a church, a college, and then a resort. So people hear phantom voices, and they feel cold spots, and child spirits are apparently very common, especially a girl named Lucy. Lucy was left behind when her parents traveled to Detroit, and she died before they returned. Now she roams the halls, and she's still calling for them. That's so sad. Why would they leave their kid? And the most infamous spirit is Harvey, a Mackinac College student in the late 60s and early 70s. He was heartbroken, and he walked into the woods and shot himself, or so that's the official story. Rumors claim that there were 2 bullets in his head, suggesting murder. Harvey's ghost haunts the resort theater, poking and prodding guests. So, it is interesting that 2 bullets, if they're saying that he killed himself, but if there's 2 bullets, then after the first one, there wouldn't have been able to be a second one. You know what I mean?
No, even if he lived through the first one, he wouldn't have function enough to do the second.
So it makes you wonder, what this kid got into, what happened to him, really. But overall, Mackinac Island isn't just picturesque. It's layered with centuries of human pain, honestly, and war and injustice and ultimately mystery. It's a sacred native ground. It also held the history of 7 drowned women and soldiers and ghost dogs and amputated limbs, strangely, and then a love-struck student whose story may not be what it seems. And somewhere in the middle of all that, a very good piece of fudge somehow.
Well, that's a whole lot of ghosts for one little island.
Yeah, right. You go for the fudge, right? But you'll apparently stay for the hauntings and then possibly get chased by a red-eyed shadow cloud.
I swear if that thing came after me, I'd be gone faster than a cat on a hot tin roof.
What, you're not even going to stop for the fudge?
Girl, I'd grab it on the way out. I'm Southern, not stupid.
Okay, fair. But now that we've survived Mackinac Island with our fudge in hand, it's time to pack our ghost hunting bags and head to our next haunted spot. And this one, it's a doozy.
Jaboticabal.
Avada Kedavra.
I think I'm saying it right. Jaboticabal?
Seems about right.
Cool. A small city in the Brazilian countryside. It's about 200 miles north of Sao Paulo. It's warm there and surrounded by farmland. And back in the mid-1960s, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else. But in December of 1965, one family's home turned into the stage for one of the most violent and bizarre poltergeist cases ever recorded. It all started with bricks that didn't come from a crumbling wall or a careless worker, but that appeared inside the home and dropped to the floor with no footsteps, no intruders, just bricks.
Like, poof, okay, here's a portal, like, bye, hello.
Yes. At first, the family thought it must be a prank. There was a pile of similar bricks in their backyard, so maybe some neighbor kids were finding a way to toss them inside. But as the days went on, the bricks kept falling at all hours, and no one was ever caught. After several tense, sleepless nights, they called the parish priest, who came to bless the house and perform an exorcism. The blessing didn't help. If anything, it made the activity angrier. The family turned to someone they trusted, a neighbor named João Volpe, a local dentist who was also a practicing spiritist.
They go hand in hand, dental and spiritual work, yeah.
Duh. Volpe believed the source of the trouble wasn't the house itself, but someone inside it. That someone was 11-year-old Maria Jose Ferreira. Quiet, small for her age, but with a strange way of talking about invisible friends. Volpe believed Maria was a natural medium, a kind of living lightning rod for spiritual activity. He offered to take her into his home, hoping to calm whatever unseen forces were swirling around her. Okay, I don't care who you are or what you claim to be, you're not taking my daughter into your home.
Because that seems really suspicious. Why were people so trusting back in the day?
I don't know. Because there was no social media to hear all these stories that are going on, I guess.
And to be honest, everything, the men were always right. And if women or children said something contrary, they were just hysterical.
Or, thrown into a pool with your legs bound and rocks on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, for a few days, everything was quiet. There were no bricks, no strange knocks, just the sound of a normal household. But then it started again. First, a few stones appeared on the floor, then more. Soon they were falling and flying through the rooms whenever Maria was nearby. Volpe began counting them. 312 in all.
That is an insane amount of bricks.
One of them weighed more than 8 pounds.
He was an 8-pound brick.
A ghost? And yet, that weighs more than my cat.
Your cat shouldn't weigh 8 pounds, so I guess that's good.
My kitten weighs 7 pounds. She was weighed yesterday.
Damn.
She's a Bengal though, so she's going to be 15 pounds.
I mean, my little Chorky is a 5-pounder, so.
So these bricks, they're super freaking heavy. They are just appearing in midair as if dropped by some invisible hand. The phenomena weren't just violent. They were strange in ways that defied logic. One day, a dozen eggs sat untouched in the refrigerator. Minutes later, 3 of them were found nestled under a rooster in the backyard chicken coop. So they came out of the fridge and ended up under the butt of a rooster.
And that would be a weird place. A rooster? Roosters shouldn't be brooding
I
on
didn't
eggs.
think about that. I was thinking it's weird because it's reverse. It's supposed to, go from the chicken coop to the fridge. But yeah, it was under a rooster.
Yeah, it's definitely not going from...
Eggs.
Yeah, it's not coming from a rooster butt. That's for sure.
But the refrigerator door hadn't been opened, so I don't know how they got reversed and under a rooster, but that's how it was. Another time, a stone fell from above, split into two before hitting the ground. So it fell, but before it even hit the ground, it split into two pieces, and the pieces landed in opposite directions. When picked up, the pieces clung to each other like magnets, a pool that faded over time. So they would cling together, but that pull towards each other would fade over time, and then they would just, fall apart. Then there was the day a small stone appeared out of nowhere, tapped 3 different people lightly on the head, and then dropped harmlessly to the floor. They all described it as feeling like a puff of compressed air rather than a solid impact.
How random. It's just like, okay, we're playing Duck, Duck, Goose with some pebbles.
Yeah. Maria also began to discover that her invisible companions could bring her things. If she wished for candy or a trinket, it would appear, sometimes right at her feet. Walking through the street one day with Volpe and a friend, she mentioned wanting a brooch. And a moment later, there it was on the cobblestones in front of her.
So you think that maybe this little girl was just having tantrums and not having a good time at home, and so that's why the bricks were falling everywhere?
I don't know. Sometimes they say it's connected to someone's emotions. But at first, these events almost seemed like party tricks, but the novelty wore off fast because the playfulness turned to cruelty. In the Volpe home, every piece of glassware and crockery was smashed over the course of 3 weeks. Maria began showing up with bruises and bite marks. Okay, so now it's not just in Maria's home, it's in this Volpe guy's home where she's staying.
And it's still weird that this little kid is staying with this random dude.
And why does she have bruises and bite marks? Is it from the poltergeist or this creepy little man that stole her?
Yeah. Or is this a story that this creepy little man that stole her away made up just to, because obviously a man making up a story is more believable than a kid telling the truth.
Yep. I mean, granted, how does he make rocks appear in midair? And
I mean, that's a good point.
But I mean, it does not negate the fact that it's strange that he took this young girl out of her home to stay with him, and she ends up with bruises and bite marks. But I mean, and maybe that's why it got violent. Like, it started off playful, but now that she's moved into this dude's home, it's messing with his home.
Yeah.
It's angry now. So maybe he's messing with her, and whatever it is angry.
And if it was connected to her emotions, it was playful at home. But if, he was being and she was getting kind of uncomfortable and angry, no wonder why it was starting, the energy that was connected to her started to get angry.
But now the objects are being hurled at Maria. Not just small items, but chairs, a large sofa, even a heavy gas cylinder. Pictures and mirrors were ripped from the walls and flung across the room. And when she slept, cups and glasses would suddenly appear over her mouth as if trying to block her breathing. So I guess, up against her mouth, I assume?
Yeah, that's what I imagined.
There were whispers, rumors that the attacks might have included attempts of sexual harm.
No ghost. That was the man.
See, again, this could be him and messing with the little girl's mind, making her think other things.
Yeah, definitely.
40 days after the first bricks fell, a new terror began. Needles. Long, sharp sewing needles started appearing in Maria's body, always in the heel of her shirt.
No, man.
They would be buried deep in the flesh. Once, 55 of them were removed in a single sitting. If her foot was bandaged, the bandages would be ripped away. So, not all of this can be explained by the creepy little man, but
yeah.
The creepy little man is still a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But cases like this poltergeist are so rare that investigators could only find one historical parallel, a case from 1761 at the Lamb Inn in Bristol, England, where a girl named Molly Giles suffered similar attacks. On March 14th, 1966, Maria was eating lunch at school when the fabric of her clothing began to smolder without any fire source nearby. That very same day, the Volpe's bedroom erupted into flames. A pillow burned from the inside out. Volpe grabbed it, trying to smother the fire, and ended up with severe burns on his hand.
Good.
Yep. By now, the attacks had been going on for months, and the strangest part, they only seemed to happen when Maria was there. Volpe eventually took Maria to Brazil's most famous medium, Chico Xavier. In a session at his spiritist center in Uberaba, the spirits allegedly responsible spoke through him. They said, "She was a witch. Many suffered because of her, and I died because of her. Now we are making her suffer too." The implication was chilling because this meant that Maria was perhaps in a past life a witch. She had made people suffered, and people died because of her. Because she was being punished for crimes that she had committed in this other life.
Or the spirits were confused and mistaken, because we're supposed to be reborn with pretty much a clean slate, And if they're still kind of stuck in their stage of limbo, sometimes things get a little tricky when they're trying to recover from their trauma from being alive.
Stuck in their vengeance.
Yeah.
Volpe and his spiritist circle tried prayers and magnetic healing rituals. The worst of the violence faded, but the poltergeist activity never stopped completely. Fruits and vegetables would still fly across the room without warning. After about a year, Maria returned to live with her mother.
She was gone from her mom for over a year.
With the creepy little man. 4 years later, in 1970, she was dead.
Oh.
She was 13.
Yeah.
The official report said she'd drunk a soft drink that was laced with pesticide. She died instantly. Whether it was a desperate act to escape her torment, possibly from the creepy little man,
her trauma that resulted,
or something more sinister, the poltergeist, no one can say. Volpe's written account was signed by numerous respected witnesses. But even with all that documentation, this case remains one of the darkest and most disturbing in poltergeist history.
We've definitely told a lot of ghost stories on this show, but that one hurts.
Yeah, it's the kind of story that sticks with you. Like it's heavy, and especially with the underlying that come to mind, little man.
And listeners, we're only saying it's creepy because it fucking is creepy. I'm just saying,
It is. Don't let your child go live with some strange dentist that claims to be a spiritist and take your children away to live.
And then
here?
Claim that the ghost was touching her sexually. And it makes you wonder if what those spirits said through Chico was true. How much of our baggage from other lives follows us into this one? And I could answer that. I think we're supposed to be reborn with a clean slate. However, some baggage does follow us. But I think, we resolve that in our pre-life contracts, so to speak. You know what I mean? But I feel like sometimes there's still residual feelings from, a past life. Like for me, I was so certain that I was a man in a past life and very musically inclined and because I've definitely always been musically inclined and been more masculine. Even though I present very feminine, I have a more masculine sort of dominance energy. Anyway, did a past life regression, and the person told me exactly what I had been thinking, and I didn't even tell her what I had been thinking. You know what I mean? So sometimes things do follow us from one life to another.
Bless your heart, Miranda. You're just trying to get me to pour more wine so we can stay up all night arguing about reincarnation.
I wouldn't say arguing. I like discussing this particular topic.
All right, Miranda. Show me what you got for story 3.
This next story takes us to Amherst, Nova Scotia, late summer 1878. It's a quiet little town, the kind where gossip moves faster than the stagecoach. But that summer of 1878, the talk wasn't about crops or marriages. It was about an 18-year-old girl named Esther Cox, and the thing that seemed determined to kill her. For over a year, her life, and the lives of everyone around her, would be stalked by something invisible, unpredictable, and relentless. The newspapers would call it the Great Amherst Mystery. And it all began with violence. Esther was living in a small cottage with her sister Olive, Olive's husband Daniel, and their children, and a few other family members. She'd struck up a friendship with a man named Bob McNeil, despite whispers that he was bad news. And of course, when girls get whipped, and the same thing with boys. Sometimes when people get whipped when we're young and dumb, it doesn't matter what other people say about them, One night, Bob pulled the gun on her. The assault was stopped before it became worse, but the threat and the humiliation and the fear, it left a scar on her that no one could see. She told no one in the house what happened, but her sisters noticed a change. And she cried at night, and she was withdrawn, and then some noises began. At first, it was a soft rustling under the bed. Esther and her sister Jane figured it was a mouse, but within nights, the sounds were louder, they were sharper, and they were joined by violent bangs that seemed to come from nowhere. Then it turned physical. Esther's body swelled painfully, and her skin turned from burning hot to ice cold in seconds. She convulsed, babbled things she couldn't remember later, and her bedding was repeatedly torn away, even as family members replaced it. One morning, words appeared on the wall over her bed, and they said, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill." The noises escalated into thunderclaps that seemed to come from inside the house, and sometimes even from under the bed. And it was said that neighbors could hear them from 200 yards away. That's really loud.
In case you're not good with measurements, think of like a ruler. 3 of those is 1 yard.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about 200 yards. That's far.
Yeah, that is definitely far. So the family tried to keep it quiet, but after a few nights like that, like having that loud-ass thunderclap type noise, they called in Dr. Carrot. Sorry.
I don't know if that's carrot or carrot.
Alright.
I don't know, but I really am digging Dr. Carrot.
I'm going to say carrot. We'll call him Dr. Carrot instead of carrot. Do a little accent. Carrot.
Okay.
But after a few nights like that, they called in Dr. Carrot. Dr. Carrot saw it all. The words on the wall, the deafening bangs, and the strange system of raps that seemed to answer questions intelligently. Objects moved on their own. Things vanished from one spot and appeared to another. So he was like, I see it, taking a note of it. And it wasn't just inside the house. Fires began breaking out, like small fires, but obviously still unsettling. The activity followed Esther wherever she went. So it wasn't just isolated to the house. And she began to hear voices. She claimed to see the entities themselves, and she said that they were not friendly. Life for her became impossible. The family sent Esther to stay with friends, but of course the disturbances followed her. In a dining saloon where she worked, a knife flew through the air and stabbed her. Someone pulled it out. However, it flew right back into the same exact wound. So word spread fast. Townsfolk gathered outside her home, hoping to see something, anything. So it's like kind of she became a sideshow maybe. So some left watching her. They left convinced. And others accused her of being a faker. But the list of witnesses was impressive. Neighbors, clergymen, doctors, scientists. One reverend swore he saw a bucket of cold water begin to boil on its own. A Baptist minister, Dr. Edwin Clay, publicly defended her, convinced the phenomena weren't her doing. So she definitely did have a lot of backup that, she wasn't just fabricating all this. During a trip to St. John, New Brunswick, local investigators claimed to communicate with multiple spirits through the knocking system. The main present called itself Bob Nickel, a shoemaker in life. Others named themselves as Peter Cox, one of Esther's relatives, and Maggie Fisher. Later, more names appeared. Mary Fisher, Jane Nickel, Eliza McNeil. Whoever or whatever they were, they seemed to know things about Esther's life, and they didn't hold back their hostility. So in June of 1879, an actor turned investigator named Walter Hubble arrived because he saw all those headlines and he was like, okay, let me go and see what's going on here. So he came over. He moved into the Teed cottage for about 6 weeks and keeping what he claimed was a daily record. Hubble swore he saw objects fly across the rooms, he saw fire start from nowhere, and sharp objects jab into Esther's skin, all while she was in plain view. He published a book that same year, including affidavits from 13 witnesses. But Hubble was an entertainer by trade, and of course skeptics would later accuse him of embellishing events to sell copies and boost his career. Decades later, some researchers even suggested Esther herself caused the phenomena, consciously or in a dissociated state. So whenever Esther came home, the activity flared up again. While working for a man named Arthur Davison, his barn burned down. He accused her of arson. She was convicted, spent a month in jail, and after that, the hauntings stopped. Esther married twice. She had 2 children and eventually moved to Massachusetts, where she died in 1912. But Amherst never forgot. For some, it was the most credible haunting in Canadian history. For others, it was a case of tragedy, of fraud, and a town caught up in its own ghost story.
You know, if my walls ever start writing, "You are mine to kill," I'm not even packing a suitcase, I'm just running.
You're not even going to stop for your wine?
Girl, I'll grab the bottle on the way. Priorities.
Good, because we will need it for our next story, because this next haunting, it's not just creepy, it's actually downright terrifying.
Now, a story from Arkansas. Yeah. In the center of Little Rock sits a place where Arkansas history sleeps, and some say occasionally wakes up. Mount Holly Cemetery. Established in 1843, it's one of the state's oldest and most distinguished burial grounds. The locals call it the Westminster Abbey of Arkansas because of the company you'll find there. Governors, senators, Civil War generals, and other notable names etched into stone. By daylight, it's peaceful, neat rows of monuments, oak trees stretching overhead, and a sense of quiet dignity. But when the sun dips down, the atmosphere shifts. The stillness becomes watchful. Mount Holly is known for its grand headstones and intricate statues. Angels, mourners, figures frozen in thought. But some visitors insist those statues aren't as still as they look. A few swear they've come back days later to find the statue's position has changed. An arm lowered, a head tilted differently. Others claim the statues watch them, that the carved eyes follow their steps down the path. It's the kind of story you hear on a ghost tour, laugh off, and then can't quite stop thinking about the next time you walk past one. Have you ever watched Doctor Who?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you remember the angel statue?
Like the weeping angels?
Yes, the weeping.
Gosh, those creepy. Don't blink.
Don't blink. Those were some of the freakiest, most terrifying episodes.
Honestly, I wanted to be a weeping angel for Halloween, but I was like, nobody's gonna get it.
Dude, when you eventually move here, because I'm going to talk you into it someday, we could totally do that. I could be Doctor Who and you could be a weeping angel.
I love that.
Anyways, then there's a child in the cemetery, of course. People say his spirit roams the grounds in old-fashioned clothes, darting between the headstones. One moment he's playing, a flicker of movement among the marble markers. The next, he's gone. Some witnesses say he fades like mist. Others swear he simply rounds a corner and disappears. Then we have full-bodied apparitions, and they're a reoccurring theme there. A woman in a Victorian dress is sometimes seen lingering near certain graves, and her expression is heavy with grief before she vanishes into the dark. And near one monument, a man in a Confederate uniform reportedly stands guard, as though still protecting those buried beneath the stone. Remember, there are Civil War generals at this cemetery, so that would make sense. Mount Holly's visitors also talk about the voices. Not shouts, not moans, just hushed conversations, too quiet to make out. Every now and then, someone catches a name being called. Then there's the air. A warm evening can turn cold in an instant in certain corners of the cemetery. And with that chill comes the sensation you're not alone, that someone is standing close enough to touch your shoulder, even when the path is empty. Today, Mount Holly is still an active cemetery and a site for history tours. School groups come to learn about Arkansas's past. Paranormal investigators come to see if they can catch proof of what others have only whispered about. Some say the spirits there are just echoes, energy imprinted on the place. Others believe they're conscious, aware, and choosing to remain. Whatever the truth, Mount Holly Cemetery is one of those rare places where history and mystery walk side by side, and you can never quite be sure which one is watching you.
Okay, note to self, if we ever visit Mount Holly, when I come and move over there, I'm bringing sunglasses so those statues cannot make eye contact.
And then I'm bringing the wine, so I won't care if they do.
Okay, perfect. So you handle the liquid courage, and I'll handle running toward the car if one of them moves.
Deal. And speaking of moving, that wraps up tonight's journey into the haunted and historic.
So, if you enjoyed hanging out with us in the dark corners of history, go ahead and hit that like button, leave us a rating, and drop a review. It helps more curious souls find their way to our little corner of the paranormal.
Yes, please rate, and review. People tend to forget about that. I am one of those people.
Don't be like Christal.
Don't be like me. And hey, we want to hear your stories too. So your ghost encounters, strange experiences, weird history, I don't know, just any topic you want us to talk about. Or maybe you wrote a ghost story that's not true, but it's really awesome and you want to share it. Just send it our way. You can email us at witchenandwinen@gmail.com.
That's a WITCHN
ANDWINEN@gmail.com.
And tell us if there's a haunting we should cover, right? Or maybe your own run-ins, like we already said before, like anything that you think we should talk about, like your own bump in the night, and we love reading them. And so that means you might just hear your story on a future episode.
Yes, and we'll definitely give you a shout out if you would like us to use your name. But until next time, keep your glass full and your lights on.
Remember, if you hear something in the dark, it's probably Mom sneaking the last cookie. Good night, spooky people!